Welcome to the third video in our drawing videos for the Mach 3 software. Before we kind of get started on some of the new patterns for this class, I wanted to talk about exporting patterns a little bit easier. So I discovered a different way to do it. So this is the two-circle pearl that we had designed in, I think it was the first class. And I'm going to go, instead of going export and taking it back out to the C drive and then bringing it back in, I'm going to go ahead and say save pattern. And you can go ahead and name it what you want. So we'll call this a point-to-point double pearl. And I'll go ahead and save it. And then if you go to your pattern library and search for part of that name, it'll come up, but you can see that there are no tags assigned. But you can assign tags. So let me go ahead and close out of this by going to your library and assign tags. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll search for this, click on it, and then I can come over here and assign whatever tags I want. So I'll go ahead and assign jukebox and point-to-point. And so now I should be able to search for that by going to either point-to-point or jukebox. So let's search by tag. And there it is. So that's a much faster, more direct way to save the patterns that we're drawing in these classes. Another hint that you might find useful is that these are tags are sort of listed in an arbitrary order. You can reorder them. So I would like to see my pattern types all up here at the top. And so I might go through and, let's see, pull the sashing, just drag it up to the top where you want it. You could put them in alphabetical order if you want, or however you want to do it. But I have Evernote set up this way where it's pattern type first and then theme. And you might want to go ahead and alphabetize the themes and then pattern designers at the very bottom. So you can certainly reorder those any way that you want. Another handy feature in the draw menu is the ability to come in and edit and simplify. So let's say that you didn't want to have all this detail in the tail. You can come to the draw menu and it will bring up these nodes, and some conversion programs will add a bunch of these, and so it can be really hard to come in and try to edit these shapes because there's so many of them. But there's this really handy option that we have in the draw menu, and that's to select a segment, and you can pick on 2 points and it will put a dark line in between them, and you can preview and it will really take out a lot of those nodes. You can also go in here to delete points and take out even more if you want to simplify that and smooth it out to an even more significant degree. So play around with the less point, more point option. But sometimes, you know, if you had a button on the quilt right here and you wanted to try to have the stitching go outside that button, this is a way to eliminate a lot of those nodes. Let's start designing by building a block that might be in a quilt that you're working on. So I have gone to the pattern library, gone down to the bottom of it to these Z space items and grabbed the Z square and double click to put that into my pattern pad. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring that on to the screen, and I'm going to change that width to 4 by 4. You can make it whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. And I have my snap to grid on, so you could disable that if you want, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it on in this situation. And now I'm going to use that as a repeatable pattern. So I'll go to the edge to edge icon, select multiply, and I'm going to change that to 4 by 4. And go ahead and let that generate. So you can see I get those squares over here. I wish they were a little bit darker, but it is what it is. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is go to the transform tool, select them, right click, and DQ them. And you could also lock them if you want, just so you don't move them around. We're going to just use this as a drawing template to draw over. So let's say lock. So now I'll go ahead and go to my draw menu and choose the line, and I still have snap to grid on, which is fine. And so I'm going to start here and draw an Ohio star. that we can use to design over. So just clicking along here with that snap to grid on. And you can certainly do this with the boundary tool as well, which would already be locked and DQ'd. Okay, so now I have that as a template. I'll go ahead and lock that and DQ it as well, just so I don't accidentally drag something around. So now I can use this as a block to start drawing my original design on. Let's start with a really simple pattern. And so I am in the draw menu. I still have my snap to grid on. You can choose to leave that on or not. I'm going to select arc and begin. And up here at the top I have mouse selected as well. So I'm drawing with the mouse. So I'm going to let it snap to the middle. Maybe come out here to this one and create an arc, first, last, and then peak of it. Come back down here to the last point, create this arc, and right click to deselect, and that's the first part of my pattern. So we can do this as quarters or eighths or any variety of things to draw. So I'm going to go ahead and select that again and go to the wreath tool, and I'll choose to have 4 repeats, and I want them all to be 0 distance from the center. And let me say change rotation point, and you can see I get this circle that I can move around, and I'm going to click that here so that it knows that's where I want to do my center. And when I click it, it places all 4 of those perfectly in my star. So I can go ahead and say accept, and I have that as a pattern. Let's draw another design using, or by dividing this into eighths. And so I'm going to go ahead and create a line to show where the diagonal would be. I still have my snap to grid on. Right click to stop that, and then I'm going to go ahead and go back to transform, select that, lock it, and DQ it. And so we'll just draw 1/8 of the pattern and then replicate it. So still in the draw menu, I'll go ahead and maybe choose the arc, and I'll start here in the center, and first and last click. You can pull it, beyond the lines. You just have to experiment and get a feel. Actually, let me not quite go all the way back to the center. Do this. I'll go up here and then right click to stop. So what I'm going to do with this one is go back to my transform menu, copy it, and I will mirror it with this icon up here, and then I have to rotate it in transform clockwise to get it in the right position to bring it back over here. So now what I'll do is they both start down here and end up here, and I don't want that to happen on one of them. I want to reverse that. So I'll click on it, say reverse so, and so now you can see this one starts up here. So I'll select the first part of it, and I'm going to go ahead and say link to connect those two and accept. So now let's use that in an array. Back over, I'm going to leave it at 4, 0 space from the center point, and just double check that my rotation point's down here. Click, and it puts in 4 copies of that, and then I can say accept. So those are separate though, so you'll want to link them. So we'll go back to, they're grouped, but they're not linked. So you want them to link so they also is one pattern. So I'm going to right click and then ungroup them, select one, go back to my group menu, choose link, select the next one I want to sew, the third one, and the fourth one, and accept. And so now those are connected. You can go ahead and save those as a pattern. Let's draw a pattern for a flying geese block. Go back to the draw menu, still have my channel or my snap to grid on, and I'm going to select line and start up here. So we'll draw the goose first and then the background block. Right click to stop. Go ahead and lock that. You have to go back to your transform menu. Lock it and DQ it. So that's our template for that. And so we'll go back to the draw menu. I'm going to go ahead and choose arc and begin and start right here at what's called the butt of one goose, and maybe zoom in a bit and draw some arcs in here. Another arc. And then I'll try to keep that even down here. Another arc. And then maybe I'll come this way and do a couple arcs going out this direction. And then I need the pattern to end on the left here, or on the right here. So I'm going to do my final click there and set the arc to be a straight line. So this would qualify as that kind of a pattern, a butt to beak pattern. And you can go in and edit it a little bit. I see that I'm probably off a little bit on one of these, so let me take my snap to grid off just to sort of even that out. As long as my start's on the left, end is on the right, and they're on the same horizontal line, this will qualify. So now I could go ahead and export that. I'll go ahead and copy one for myself to show you how this would be set up. Let's go to the auto fit function and say begin with my mouse. And so if I was clicking along these flying geese, that would fit on each goose, even if it started changing direction. So that's called a butt to beak pattern. I've mocked up another block that would be like a Dresden plate. Dresdens are all totally different, so you have to do some math and figure out what the measurement is on the side versus the peak and how many fan blades there are. And so I've just drawn this up as an 8-part Dresden wreath, and so I'll go ahead and use that to design an auto fit pattern that you can use to come in and place quilting in each of these blades. So I drew a kite shape and then went to my array and arrayed it into 8. Now there's a little bit of an issue where if I want to try to draw on this, when I go to the draw menu, it will reduce it down to just one shape, no matter what you do to group it or link it. So you can get around that. A workaround is to go ahead and export that as a pattern, or to save it as a pattern, which I've done here. So now when I bring it in and take it into my draw menu, it stays intact. It doesn't really matter that you have all of it, but that's just sort of, like I said, a trick to do it, a workaround. So let's go ahead and design a pattern. I still have the snap to grid on, so we'll start in. Okay, back to the draw menu. I've locked and dequeued my Dresden plate. I do have the corners kind of lined up with the grid line because I want to use that snap to grid, so my start is perfectly even with my end. So I'll go to the draw menu and choose arc, and we'll click on this side. Maybe I'll come down here, there. I'll go up to the middle, maybe down here to this point again, complete the other half of that, and then click on my endpoint and my arc. Let's see if I can get it lined up. Sometimes you have to move the rotation point. So let's call that good. So now this will qualify as an auto fit for a Dresden plate. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and then I'll come back and show you how you'd place that around the pattern. So here's my 8-blade Dresden. I'm going to bring it on the screen, which I've already done here, and choose auto fit. And I'll be drawing with the mouse, but normally you would be using your sew head to do this on the quilt. And you can play around with the maintain ratio and height and lock, but because I've designed it for this, I think it'll be fine. So I'll go ahead and select it. That disappears, and I can just click right around my Dresden, and it will place those into the blades. You want to be kind of careful because you can distort it. So that would also, as one pattern, it would look really great. You can bring in an image from an outside source to trace, and so I'll go to settings, add image, and I want to choose resizable, otherwise it fills the entire background and it's tough to edit. So I'll choose resizable, and I will browse. I put an image on my desktop. So I'll pull that up, and you can change things if you want, bringing it in. So there's my little image. I want to rotate him. It's a children's or child's drawing that you can then trace over to make it a stitchable pattern. So I'll go ahead and right click and lock it just so I don't accidentally move it around. And then just like we did with the text in the text class, you'll come in and begin drawing. And you want to think continuous line. How can you travel as far as possible without anything being interrupted? So I'll just start clicking along with my arc tool. And I won't do the whole drawing, but you'll get the idea here that, you know, there's areas that you're going to have to double over. Oop. And so you would just trace around the whole little drawing, and you could let that stitch out, save it as a pattern. Great way to hang on to your children's artwork. We get some interesting requests for patterns, and if you keep it really simple, you'll find there's a lot that you can do to draw them on your own. And so we had one customer that wanted us to do arbitrarily spaced horizontal lines all the way down the quilt and then turn the quilt and put them so it was a grid that covered the entire quilt. And so you don't have to think about, you know, creating an 80-inch square quilt and having the lines travel all the way across. So you can work very small and just blow that up. So let's just start in here with the draw menu, and I'm going to choose line, and I still have snap to grid. I want to put snap to grid on. So I'll say begin, and you can just work a small distance. So I'll just kind of draw a few here. And you can only snap to the grid that you can see. So if you zoom way in, you can snap to a smaller grid. Okay, so let's say that that's going to work. Well, all you're going to do now is go ahead and use your transform tool to pull it to the size of the quilt. I've got maintain ratio on here. I'll change that. So, and I will also unsnip my grid, so I'm not fighting that. But you can just drag it out and scale it however you want to, and get those perfectly horizontal lines that can go across their quilt, and then you would turn the quilt and do the same thing going the other direction. You guys are going to love this. A question came up this week about curved crosshatching, so I wanted to show you how you can do some of that. I'm going to go back to our ABC draw menu, and I'm going to leave actually the snap to grid off for now. I'll go back in and probably snap to grid to start the first and the last line, points on the same horizontal line, so this could be set up as a point-to-point pattern. But let's just go ahead and start drawing. So I'm going to use the line tool, and this would be the first part of it. And I'll just come over here and start drawing some lines, just trying to kind of keep things even. And you can edit anything that you want here, but let's try this. And you can tidy it up as much as you want. So right click to stop that. And so yeah, if you wanted to, you can come in here and line things up a little bit more carefully, but we don't really need to for this demonstration. So now what I'm going to do is double click on a line and then right click and say arc, and it gives me a rotation point. So let's do that, right click, arc, and so you can get this into a curve shape. Work all the way across. So you could really fit this to unique shapes on a quilt and get some very interesting effects. One more. And then let's go back to the transform menu. I'm going to select that and I'm going to copy it, and I'll flip it to get the other side of that curved cross hatching. So put it there to line it up. Now They both are going to start in the outer corner and go towards the center, which I don't want. So I'll take this one, the second one, and I will reverse sew. And then what you could do is go ahead and go to your group menu and link them. And that will put this line down here that will connect the two of them. So I have saved this as a pattern, brought it back in, and now you can, I'll take my snap to grid off, go ahead and set it up as a repeatable border if you wanted to. I'm not sure that I like these vertical lines, but you now have the skills that you can go in and edit and change it into the patterns you want. So I hope you found this series really helpful. I appreciate your sticking through it with us, and let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to demonstrate either in drawing or just in the program itself. Thanks so much.